forgot about us as women, right? I forgot about the husbands, right, that may or may not even be there, right? I forgot about all that. All I thought about were kids, motherhood. Then I figured that was all wrong, right? We can't start with the kids because we were women first.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So how can we dress a household if we don't know how to dress ourselves? You know, we don't know who we are. So I wanted to define it. Let's figure out who we are, right? Because we need to figure that out so we can have direction on where we're going or where God is leading us to, right? So as women, we have a mandate on our bodies. We have been chosen by God to be givers, to be nurturers, right? To be the person that is the glue, to have the legend, to have the vision, to have the foresight, to have everything, right, on us. That's our task. We're not supposed to do this by ourselves, though, right? God understands our hearts. He made us to be soft, to be loving, but also to be strong and to stand tall and to not give up, right? So how do we get dressed? You wake up in the morning and you say, I'm going to get dressed in the morning. What are you going to wear? Right? How do you know what you're going to wear? You got to know where you're going, right? So you don't get dressed for where you are right now, right? You get dressed for where you're going, right? So you're going to need to wear shoes, sneaks, combat boots. You need a Kevlar. You need a gun. What do you need? You know, what type of, where are you doing that day? You need to put on a dress, cotton underwear, or lace underwear. What type of evening is it going to be? We're getting dressed for what's to come. Right? We're not getting dressed for what is going on right now at this moment, right? So you think about all those things, and then you realize what you need to wear, right? And it's the same thing with the direction that God has for you. You need to figure out, we need to figure out who we are as women first, so we know how to get dressed. Does that make sense? Of course, we're saying getting dressed metaphorically, right? We're not talking about like putting on clothes, right? We're talking about your mental state. Right? We're talking about what you believe. We're talking about how you are on the inside. Your inner thoughts. Who are you? Right? Who are you? Who are you really? You know? And that's when you have to ask yourself kind of like the hard questions. Because however you're clothed, that's how you're clothing your house. You know, if you're clothed with fear, apprehension, if you're clothed with torment, shame, bitterness, frustration, isolation, loneliness, if you're clothed with bitterness, if you're clothed with hatred, rage, drunkenness, infidelity, the inability to think straight and clear, the inability to sit down and listen, if you're clothed with all those things, you're indirectly teaching your household to be all those things, right? We get so distracted by our kids, and they're so beautiful, right? And our husbands are so great, right? And our lives, our moms, our sisters, our friends are so awesome. We get entangled in those people, and we forget to remember who we are, so we can have that direction. Because however we are, we're indirectly going to give it to our household, right? And then some people are like, oh, I have kids. It's over. Like, my kids are grown. It's too late for me, right? Like, my time is it. But is that the direction that God is telling you, right? Or are you walking in a little bit of fear, right? You've already defined who you are, and you're scared to kind of redefine yourself according to what God has for you at that level, right? So you don't know where you're clothed or how you're clothed. If you don't know how you're clothed, then how are you going to clothe your household, right? How are you going to walk unafraid in your household if you don't even know your direction, if you don't know who you are, right? And so that's another thing. So for this purpose, so I said all that. So then you have to ask yourself the real questions, right? There was a woman in my life, she's passed, but she's a legend, right? So her words live forever. And she said, you have to look yourself in the mirror and ask yourself the real questions, right? You need to ask yourself the hard questions. What are you afraid of? Be honest with yourself. What are you afraid of? What are you afraid of? Are you afraid of abandonment? Are you afraid of getting raped? Are you afraid to walk down the street by yourself? Are you afraid to be alone? Right? Are you afraid to be a leader? Are you afraid of abandonment? Are you afraid of loneliness, of aging? Are you afraid of sickness? Are you afraid of anger? You're afraid of getting angry, so you decide not to speak. Right? That was one of my fears. I was so afraid that I would go from 0 to 100 that I just didn't talk at all. Right? Because I had that fear. Are you afraid of failure? Are you afraid of confidence? Right? Are you afraid? What are you afraid of? Because at that moment when you realize that and you accept that, that's my fear, you have to pour all that in what scripture is like in an alabaster box, so to speak, right? And you have have to give it 100% to God, because if you don't, you're going to put that fear in your kids. Right? You're going to put that fear even in your marriage, even in your womanhood. You are going to walk in that fear and plant seeds of fear throughout your whole life and throughout your legacy. This is beyond us, right? We're women, right? We have things that come out of us that reproduce after their own and reproduce after their own. So we, in essence, live forever. Our legacy lives forever, right? So if we're clothed in fear, we're planting fear in our household. Forever. Until our children see that they're also afraid of something and they're walking in fear, and now they're 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, and they realize, I never did do that because I was so afraid. I didn't want to take a chance. I didn't want to fail. I didn't want to be embarrassed, you know? So we're clothing these, so we have to think about those things. So now what? Right? So the thing I love about God is like he kind of sees things in a different way, right? I was driving the car with my son, and he says, Mommy, we're on the bridge. We can see all of them, but they can't see us. And I was like, you know what? You're right. We are on a bridge, and they can't see us, but we can see them, right? So I can see a car is coming, and I can see an accident ahead before the driver even sees it, right? But I have confidence in that driver, right? That it may slow him down, but he's going to get around the accident and ultimately get to his direction, right? I feel like God is the same way. He's like on a bridge, you know, and we can tap into that bridge. We can climb up the hill and tap into it if we release our fears and we allow him to hold us with that discernment, with the insight, you know, with that wisdom that we're going to need to clothe our house unafraid, right? Uninhibited, anything, just how God has purposed us to be. Does that make sense? Free, yes. It's like you got to be able to see it on another level beyond your fears, so that you can get over your fears. You know? Because how do we cope with our fears? How do you cope when you're afraid? When you're alone, what do you do? You can say it. When you're alone, what do you do?
Nothing really. I'm rarely alone. I guess I'll occupy my mind with something else. So I like to read. So I'll read a book and then just zone out in the book, I guess.
Right. So when you're alone, you occupy your mind. Right? So you occupy your mind. If you're walking down the street alone at night, it's 11 o'clock, no street lights are there, you're walking by yourself, what do you do?
Look around to see if somebody else is around, kind of feel like paranoid,
So you're doing something to cope with the fact that you gotta still get down the street, right? But you're also afraid, but you're coping. So you're looking all around, right? You're on guard, you know, or you hold yourself real tight, you know, like your bags, and you walk really fast, right? These are different things that you're doing to cope with the fear that you have when you're walking down the street by yourself alone at night, right? As a woman, I don't know if men have the same problem that we have when walking down the street, right? I mean, I don't know if they do. And it has nothing to do with whether or not we can fight, right? It's just something that we have to deal with as women, right? And then some other people, if you're coping with, say, abandonment, right? If your parents got a divorce, or if, you know, your husband left you, your boyfriend left you, if you had a kid and now you're alone, you're a single mom, you have a fear, maybe, again, that you'll be abandoned. So you kind of have to, you have to get a little puffed up. You have to be a little stronger, right? And you also have to put up kind of a gate, so no one else comes in and does the same thing to you, right? So you can also cope in other ways. You cope with fear in different ways. And these ways are usually not fruits of the Spirit, right? You usually don't cope with fear by, you know, you don't cope with if you were ever taken advantage of as a younger woman and someone took full advantage of your person, right? You don't usually cope with that by reading a book, right? You usually cope with that in other ways. You start being promiscuous, right? You start going out all the time. You lose focus. You won't care about school as much. You kind of be everywhere for a period, you know, because you're trying to cope with whatever you went through. Some people cope with it with drunkenness, with drugs, with addictions, different type of things. Or you just drown yourself in work. You know, you never were out there like that. That's not you. But you drown yourself in loneliness and isolation, because that's how you're coping with your fear of having a connection or being available for somebody else. So think about it. If you're a woman, right, and you have this fear, and you're coping with your fear by either having an addiction or isolating yourself, what are we teaching our husbands? right? What are we teaching our kids? If that's how we're coping with our fears and our apprehensions, what are we showing them? Right? What are we showing them? It's not what we say that really matters with kids.
Yes.
It's both what you say and what you do. Right? You can't tell your kid, get up, don't fall down, get up, try again, walk. And then you fall down and you just sit in your corner and in darkness and tears and crying and you don't get back up, you don't try again because you fell. You're afraid now trying again. What if you're wrong again? What if they reject you? What if all these things happen? Like you're stuck there, right? Is that what God wants for us? Is that the direction that you feel that He has for your life? Right? Is it something that you are able and willing to deal with for the rest of your life? Life doesn't end at 40 or 50 or 60 or 80 or 90 or 110. It ends when God tells you it's over. That's not our choice, right? We don't know. So as long as we're here, we have, as women, we have to be givers. We have to be nurturers. This is a divine mandate from God, and we have to own it. Right? So we go through things as women, own that stuff too. Who cares?
Yeah.
We all went through stuff. But God says, Revelations, people are saved by the blood of the Lamb and the words of your testimony. So tell people what happened to you. Don't guard your daughters. Tell them when they're young, 4 years old, 5 years old, this is your body. God is your source. This is how you pray. So that when they get older and they're 6 years old, 7 years old, and they're in school and they're thinking that they are something that they're not because of one of their friends, right? They already know, you know what? No, I'm beautiful and wonderfully made. My mom told me, and then she told me to talk to God about it when I felt weary. And this is a 6-year-old. You don't want to wait for these seeds that the world plants in our daughters' minds to become what they are, right? Insecurity, wanting to feel attached to someone. So what do they start doing? They start trying to have a boyfriend, or they start hanging with girls that they're not really good women, you know? They start doing other things because they're dealing with stuff, and we were women. We were little girls. We know when it happens, right? You remember the day that you felt that you weren't pretty. Even if your whole entire life, your parents have been telling you you're beautiful, or someone told you you're special, or someone told you you're awesome. But you remember the day you felt less than, right? You remember the day you were rejected. You remember the day that you wanted something really bad and you couldn't get it, and then you got shut down. You remember that day. Your daughters are going to go through the same exact thing. So don't wait for that day to happen, you know, because we already know we're women. We already know what it felt like when we had to wear our first bra. We already know that. We already know the signs. We know how it feels inside. So our daughters are going to go through the same thing. Prepare them before, because they're teaching this stuff in school, right? They're teaching physiology and human and sensuality in school. Is that how you want your daughter to be taught? You know, no. We want them to be better than us, right? We want them to strive to be free, to be givers and nurturers and providers and the glue. We want them to be strong enough. We want them to be prepared, not taken off guard. And I feel like the direction for us as women is to be prepared for that, to be prepared to pour into another woman, a child, your legacy, right? What God has delivered you from and what God is bringing you to, right? And it never ever stops.
Right.
You know,
Yes,
it never
yes.
stops.
Never
You know, there's
stops.
always going to be someone that needs something, and we got to be able to be strong enough to pull them up and to say, you know what? I see you. I remember being there. I remember that. And not to be afraid of the judgment that may or may not come, because ultimately, like, God is our refuge, right? God is our person. He's going to keep us. He's going to protect us. And that's really the ultimate goal, right, is to believe that and not to walk in a fear that's in our minds based on our experiences. But it's difficult, right? It's difficult because everything can kind of get down and it can be a little hard. And so it's not like you snap your fingers and you're like, oh, I'm going to do this, it's going to be great, right? You have to be able to go through the progress, go through the process, right? So my favorite quote, Frederick Douglass, without struggle, there is no progress. Without struggle, there is no progress. Without falling, you won't know how to get up, right?